Okay, that's better. All right, so today's video is gonna be a fun one. I don't really feel like talking too much today. Some things that's going on this week is really I just have, with Chog Media, we're making a new movie and I gotta get my camera ready. So I'm just gonna kind of do that for a little bit. I was at work yesterday because this isn't my full-time job. I was listening to the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia podcast, it's interesting to me because it's an absolutely absurd show. And it's basically a bunch of improv actors and them becoming writers and them wanting to feel like they have full creative control over something. You don't really hear about their process too much. So I was listening to that, and something that was interesting that they were talking about in one of their episodes was the idea of how do I know when something is done? That's interesting to me because that's something that as a creative person, it's challenging, because how do we as creatives know when what we make is done? How do I know when am I being lazy or am I being a perfectionist? Am I pushing too hard? Where in the line is I feel like something is done, or should the standard or industry standard of completion be? How you can tell that something is done is the expectation of the quality of your product is dependent on your skill. And what I mean by that is how good are you at maneuvering the software you operate into telling a story? If you're not good at editing, and let's say you're not a big VFX person, then you're going to rely very heavily on the story. This is on the story and the writing aspect. This is why people will always say that your story matters more than editing. Now, there are a lot of people and a lot of YouTubers out there that don't have good stories, they have amazing content, and they're good editors. I would encourage everyone to take a step back and say focus on the script and the idea of what you're making first, then you move along. So this is why there's the pillars of creating something. Most people know this. If you don't, it starts with idea, writing, then pursuing, which would in my world would be filming, and then there's the editorial portion and then the publishing portion. And then each of those pillars kind of have their own vibe to it. When you're in the editing room, I would strictly follow your first concept. That is extremely important because once you have a good foundation, it's better to edit something that is solid than to try and make a rewrite before you have a timeline. It's just a headache. How do I know something is done? Set yourself a standard. And each of these pillars should have their own standard of when something is done. A big one that helps me to understand where I gauge in the video world, or when I do, so this is different for when I do photography and video. Something that helps me gauge where I'm at and if something is complete is I'll kind of shoot all this footage, find where the story is, I'll edit that story in a rough outline, just like you would when you're writing a paper. And then for me, I will edit it until I feel like there is no imperfection in the video. And that's when I feel like the video is not perfect, but solid, I will show it to other people. I'll show it to the people in my company, and I'll say, what do you guys think? And they'll give their notes. They'll usually it's about pacing. It's about, hey, cut this down, which is good. You don't want people to be bored. And then I'll do, then I'll work with it. A good rule and a good standard to have is that when I edit something, I'm never going to publish that product on the same day. It is always beneficial to edit something and then walk away from it. This is very hard as a creative person, but when you walk away from it, you're going to come back with a fresh perspective, because think about it like this. You've been in a room focusing for so long on this one thing. Maybe you're editing this one small 30-second clip just to make that do the keyframes perfect or whatever, that you get this tunnel vision. So walking away from your project and coming back with a fresh perspective has helped me so many times to refine what I'm doing. And then that's generally, after I do that, I'll show it to somebody and see if they like it. Does this make sense? Is what I'm saying communicating well or resonating well? And then while Anthony's doing that, what I was gonna say is that I felt like I should have added to the video is that at the end of the day, no one can truthfully gauge when something is done, but the more you do it, the more that you're going to understand when you feel like it's done. And when you feel like it's done, it's going to be different from when you first start something to when you end something, or to when not end something, but when you become a professional in that area. And for me, as someone who's done video work for over 5 years, my gauge is going to be completely different than when I first started, because I'm going to exhaust every single tool and every single bit of resources that I have towards making that a good product. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because what truthfully makes it perfect is getting that outside perspective. That's what I wish I would have worded better in that video. But at the end of the day, it's your video, it's your vision. If you feel strongly about something, you'll have a good indication of when you're getting good at it, by when you have a backbone and you say, no, this is my vision, this is what I want to do, this is the way I want to make it. That's when you'll know, kind of like, okay, this is a story I care about, and work on things you care about. That's what I wish I would have communicated in that video. I'm so frustrated with myself right now. Okay, now for you, Anthony, what do you feel like, from your perspective and the Chog Media perspective, what do you feel like is an example as when you feel like something is done? I know my perspective is different because I'm not as good at like Photoshop, Illustrator, or the art design perspective. So how does that work for you?
All right, so being the creative advisor of Chog Media, most of the stuff that I have to do is take something that someone has said, someone has expressed somewhat of an idea of, and explain it in a way that everyone actually understands. What I think Josh is trying to say here is, I think you're trying to say, there's no such thing as perfection.
Yes.
You're gonna have an idea. It's better that you don't have a very, very specific idea. It's better that you just let it loose, let it have its own personality. Instead of what you really wanted it to be originally. Yeah. You really have to come up with an idea of it. Yeah. The basic overlying idea, and you have to come up with parts of it, just like a body. You have the whole body, but you also have the head, arms, legs. You have these different pieces that you need to flesh out themselves. You need to come up with the idea first, because otherwise you're not going to have anything to make, are you? Yeah. But then you have to separate it into pieces so that you don't spend all your time just focusing on adjusting, shuffling everything around. You need to make sure that it's concise enough. It actually has a body rather than just a mess. And that really depends on the person doing it, because someone, like Josh was saying, if someone with a video editing perspective is going to be thinking about video editing things, it's going to be mostly, does this transition work? Do we have all the pieces we want? Do we have, does it look right? Does it sound right? And you're going to have to mess with it a bunch of times. With video editing especially, you really have to take the pieces into account.
Yeah. And that's why something I wish I would have communicated on that video is like, or in that first portion was like, does it look right? Does it sound right? Are great intentions, but like, does it honor the source material?
Exactly. Is it the idea that you want?
Am I putting too many cuts and too many flashy effects that it's actually taking away from the core intention of my video?
Exactly.
And that's a huge one.
So while you don't go for the original idea you had, you still have to get along the same lines and get something in the end that is different, the same but different.
Yeah.
If you're doing something different, I do graphic design for Chog Media. And so my idea is a little different than Josh's with video editing.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing different pieces and how movement works, and my thing is it set to a rhythm? Is it set to a concise thing that gives you the effect that you want? Does this story not only tell a story, but tell it with the world, the setting that you have it in?
That's kind of, I feel like, the full thought of that video. The rest of this video is going to be about, you guys did a community night for Chog Media, and I sadly wasn't able to be a part of it. I was I was doing other things, but we have some awesome footage from that, so let's cut to that.
This is my new taser, Alex. Yeah,
That was really terrifying.
I was the boxing glove waxer on set, and yeah, it's just really tough. There's a lot of work that people don't really expect because you put the gloves down and then it gets some dust on it, so then you gotta wipe it off and make sure it's continuity stays.
Would you say that the boxing glove waxer is underappreciated on most sets?
Yes.
Would you say that the boxing waxer gets a lot of women?
I think the boxing glove waxer is underappreciated, especially on sets where boxing isn't involved.
Yeah. Monica, please come back.
Like in High School Musical, for example, the boxing glove waxer was barely even mentioned in the credits.
Yeah.
No one really even talks about him.
Honestly, that's pretty sad.
That's really unfortunate. That's really, it says a lot about our society right now.
I'm Matthew Casey. I am the snacks coordinator, supervisor. I supervise all the snacks, make sure they're appreciated and eaten by the end of set and by the end of events. So, yes.
What happens if all the snacks aren't eaten by the end of the set?
Then I've done my job.
Does anyone park behind?
What if they aren't eaten? Like, what if they don't eat all?
If they aren't eaten, then all the snacks must be taken home and appreciated elsewhere.
Do you have like a chamber where you appreciate snacks?
This is the opposite. Instead of like
Yes, the pantry.
Ryan, I don't think you should be putting this on the vlog. Hey guys, playing Quiplash.